Shalom, here is Psalm 149. Hallelujah! Sing to the Lord a new song, his praises in the congregation of the faithful. Let Israel rejoice in its Maker, let the children of Zion exult in their King. Let them praise his name and dance. With timbrel and lyre, let them chant his praises. For the Lord delights in his people. He adorns the lowly with victory. Let the faithful exult in glory. Let them shout for joy upon their couches, with paeans to God in their throats, and two-edged swords in their hands, to impose retribution upon the nations, punishment upon the peoples, binding their kings with shackles, their nobles with chains of iron, executing the doom decreed against them. This is the glory of all his faithful. Hallelujah. Another one of the Psalms, the Hallelujah Psalms that are recited every morning in our morning service in the section called Pesukei de Zimra, or the preliminary service that immediately precedes the heart of the morning service. And this psalm, like the others included in that section, begin and end with the word Hallelujah. And in this song or psalm, the psalmist essentially divides humanity into two camps. One camp is the faithful. In Hebrew, the word is Hasidim. And when we think of Hasidim today, we usually think of the Chabad or the Satmar or the Gerer, the different kinds of Hasidic sects with the very specific black garb and beards and payas and so on and so forth, a certain look and a certain ultra-Orthodox orientation. But Hasidim in this psalm simply refers to the congregation of the faithful, of God's faithful. The word chesed, when it is used in the rest of the Psalms, and when it refers to God, usually is translated as steadfast love. When God shows chesed towards God's people, that word chesed is meant in the sense of steadfast love. And this psalm emphasizes the fact that that love of God is not unrequited, but is rather repaid in kind, that God's people are chasidim, showing and demonstrating steadfast love towards their maker, towards the creator. But then on the other hand, you have the goyim, the nations. And the psalmist here asks that God imposes retribution upon the nations. Assumedly, what he is referring to here, not all the nations, but the groups of people and nations of those who deny God or defy God or set Israel as their enemies. Now, it's understandable on a certain level that the psalmist would feel this way. He lived in a time when the existence of the Jewish people was precarious, when they were continually being threatened by warlike nations and empires around them, and when they had difficulty trusting foreigners and outsiders. And so, on a human level, perhaps it is understandable that the psalmist would wish for the destruction of his enemies and the enemies of the Jewish people. On the other hand, this psalm is a kind of a signal to us in today's day and age that because we are so fortunate, especially we as American Jews living here in this country, when we are so fortunate to live in a land of freedom and democracy, we don't have to worry all the time about being destroyed and vanquished by our enemies. Certainly, anti-Semitism exists, and it is in some respects on the rise in our country. Nevertheless, Jews have never had it any better than in the United States of America. And by the same token, we feel that in our country there is a very deep division of people, putting religion aside now and putting cultural and ethnic groups aside. There is a very deep division, as we know, in our country. And that division is often defined in political and social and sociological terms. And yet, we do not live right now in a society where we need to constantly focus on us and them, on the we and everyone else outside of us as the enemy, in the way that the psalmist was forced to view in his own perspective the situation that he lived in. It's very different for us, thank God. And as a result, even though we have enemies in this world and there are people who are bent upon our destruction, and we certainly would hope and pray and wish for their defeat, within our own society and in our own country, we need to remember that it is not us and them. It is not simply Republicans and Democrats, or left-wing and right-wing, or liberals and conservatives. It is simply Americans, people who live in this country, who strive to be good citizens and strive to do our very best and follow and carry our patriotic duty towards our country in terms of service towards humanity, towards one another, and in terms of doing our utmost to speak out for our democracy and defend it in any way we can, even when we don't agree with those who try to defend and speak out for their view of democracy differently than we do. And so, this is a time to put aside our differences, to remember that it is not useful or helpful to think of ourselves and those who agree with us as the community of the Hasidim, or the faithful, the ones who are in the right, while everyone else is in the wrong. Instead, we can all be Hasidim. We can all be faithful and loyal to our country, no matter what our political orientation. We can all be faithful and loyal to God, no matter what our views and beliefs are about God or the way we follow our religion and our religious principles. We need to focus on what unites us rather than what divides us. And when the psalmist mentions the theme of praising God's name in dance, with timbrel and lyre, using musical instruments, song, music, and dance, this is a reminder that we can celebrate the unity that we feel even in diversity, and even in and giving and understanding our many differences that can separate us. There is so much more that unites us. This psalm, with its reference to musical instruments and song and dance, is an introduction to the very last psalm, which will be in the next and last video clip that I will offer here, Psalm 150, which describes praising God by use of several different kinds of musical instruments. Music and dance as tools and expression for celebration. That is something we need to focus on today. At a day when we feel that our unity is being threatened, we need to find ways to bind together in this country as human beings, as people of faith, as people who are loyal to our country, and can be loyal to one another even when we disagree. Thank you.